Islamic terrorism there, and they have their system of training and of education. Um, so, in general, I would say that every country generally should mind its own business. But the interesting thing about China is you have a country with 200 million um, millionaires, which is more than the West right now.
Yeah, sure.
That's a huge purchasing power. And also the Eurasian Union and Eurasian Economic Zone that
Sure.
Russian President Putin had in mind. And the New Silk Road and the Belt and Road Initiative,
Sure, they're compatible.
they're compatible
Yeah.
to a large degree. And that's why Xi and Putin meet a lot of times and discuss how to bring it
Sure.
together. What's happening in Central Asia is interesting because, as you said, in Central Asia they speak Russian.
Right.
And Russia has been very strong there historically. Now China is moving in, but the way they're kind of working it now, even though there's a little bit of tension, but there's tension among all countries,
Sure.
is that Russia is involved in charge of security and military,
Sure.
and China's in charge of the economic side.
Yeah,
So
that's
how they
a
come.
win-win situation, right? Well, they have a lot of land to cover, and honestly, I've been there many times, and every time I've been there, I notice improvement, and I'm very glad to see when I go there to see people enjoying life. I mean, like in Bukhara, in Kiva, in Dushanbe, in Kyrgyzstan, in Xinjiang, in Kashgar, everywhere. You know, people now they're discovering chocolate bars, lifestyles. They like music. They're very good. They're good people who deserve some kind of fresh air, and they deserve to enjoy life as much we do. Because 100 years ago, some of them were dying of starvation. When they had a bad year on a crop or something, they were dying, man. You know, like, and all those strikes, ethnic strikes and racial strikes, you know, like that part of the world is soaked in blood. So, and, you know, like, contradictory enough, they have a very strong culture. Because Chinese culture, Iranian culture, Indian culture, Russian culture, you know, like from Turkey, you know, they're all, and even, you know, Christians, they were colliding together, and there's so many manuscripts, paintings, buildings who are reminding us that at some point those people were living together. In next week or two, I will make some small talk about Central Asian art, because it's unbelievable fusion, especially in between 5th and 5th century after the Christ until 10th century, when, you know, all those, what I mentioned, all those power of fusing, and the rich merchants on the Silk Road, like in Khotan or Kucha or Turfan or Kashgar or Xi'an, yeah? So they were like these rich merchants. They were investing money in those oases in the desert. They're investing money to bring artists from all around Asia, even from the Christian world, so they can paint, and they were fusing together. So they achieved something which we cannot even achieve today. You know, these artists paying obviously for money, because the merchants, you know, they were like, you know, like they had a vision, you know, like because all those paintings, I mean, most of them were stolen. They're in the museums, but if those things could put together, we will actually witness opportunity all over again coming to us, so we can live together, trade together, and enjoy life together.
Yes. How would you think? What would you say then that the BRI, the Better Belt and Road Initiative, how does that affect the economies of Central Asia? In your opinion, the average person.
I think on a long
Does
run,
it even have an effect on people, on average people?
it does.
It does. Huh?
It's just like you said, you know, it does. You see, it's so strange. Like, I had the Uzbeks and Kyrgyz complaining because they said in Soviet Union we could walk freely in between these countries. Now, you know, some borders are closed because of the ethnic animosity and stuff. But, you know, they're opening again. You know, they're opening again because the money talks now. These guys, they want to drive nice cars, and they want to drive nice cars on the good roads, and the Chinese provide the roads. The cars are coming either from Russia or from the West, so it works, you know. And hopefully, the Russia, China, and the West can recognize mutual interest, because it's a huge market. Over there, there's so many people who are in a vast need for things we already enjoyed in Europe or America for many decades, and they should get it.
Yes, so what's interesting now is that with the Belt and Road Initiative, China's already heavily involved in Central Asia, we know that. It's heavily involved in Africa, we know that too. And now it's basically slowly making its way to Europe. That's why Serbia plays an important role, Turkey, Greece, Italy, Portugal, and in the future possibly France and Germany.
Sure.
But I think in the United States, as an American citizen, I have to say that we need to think how we integrate our economy with the world in a holistic way. And
Holistic?
Yes, holistic way. Because if you think about it, what the Chinese are doing is they're saying all these territories are connected by land, let's just trade together. And for example, they plan to have I mentioned this earlier, they plan to have a fast train, for example, leaving from the most western part of China, which is Chengdu. Chengdu, right before, it's a nice little city.
Nice.
All the way to London to have trains deliver goods in 2 days.
Wow.
Fast trains, and they get charged. They plan to do this, if it's possible, by the track. So that would completely change the world economy. But we need to see how we fit in the United States economy into this, because the United States is a huge economy as well.
Sure.
I mean, the United States could do, there's two ways I could think of. One is to really tie our economy, the United States economy, very closely with Latin America. And the other one is through Alaska to Russia and therefore to Central Asia and therefore to China. But what the Chinese have a point, even though there could be criticism, maybe they rushed too fast with the program, maybe they haven't always been considerate, maybe they didn't consider the risks always of like having a war. Or, for example, in Iraq they were heavily invested. Then there was the assassination of the Iranian general Soleimani, and then many of the Chinese merchants left. They got scared.
Really?
Yeah. The Turkish merchants stayed, but some of the Chinese merchants ran away from there. And that's why, and China invested a lot in Iraq. And also China's been helping Iraq with COVID-19 very well. But now because of this, some people were scared. So China was very worried what's going to happen with Iraq. So the problem is that the geopolitical security situation is still not so stable. So I gotta respect China on the one hand for investing and thinking ahead for the future, but there's all these new hurdles in the way. But to their credit, what they are saying is we want to do a win-win situation.
Right.
So of course, in many cases, China is the bigger player. The other countries are smaller, but still you can't deny, I think, that it has a positive effect on many economies, even if there's always mistakes or sometimes imperfect situation. But the question is how Westerners could think in a win-win, because Westerners, from a long time, it's deep in the Western mentality to think of dominating more. Like, we're the best, we're going to dominate, we're going to colonize, we'll be the best, we'll be the most competitive.
Right.
And the Chinese think more as win-win generally, and also as a team, they think together as a group. Friends come, invest together, buy a home, rent it out, share the profit, do a business together. They say our money together is worth more than if we got it on their own. Westerners generally tend to think more individualistic. I want to be the best, I'm not going to share my secrets with anyone else. So I think the Chinese way in many ways is the ways of the future, but we need to find a way how to transition to a win-win situation with minimal conflict and with mutual understanding.
I think if we can dream now, I'm also American citizen, so I can dream for my stepmother in a good terms now, right? So I think Syria is a key. I mean, Syria is destroyed almost, and it's a shame. I've been in Syria many times. I love the country, I love the people. We've been secular. We didn't know much about Syria out of Syria because we always thought Syria is like a dictatorship. Hafiz, father of Bashar, like being like a can of like a prison of the people. But when I was in Syria, I recognized the huge potential before the war, obviously. And now it's destroyed. So it could be a fresh start for everybody. I think if China, they're concerned about Iraq, they're concerned about Iran, they're concerned, but then Syria could be a challenge for them with Turkey and Russia being strongly involved in Iran, strongly involved in rebuilding, getting Western powers on the board like Israel and America and England, so they can work all together. Like when they rebuilt Germany, you know, like they can rebuild Syria, and that could be a fresh start for everybody. You know, to make Syria beautiful, so everybody comes back, and they can. I have a feeling the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and every other conflict in the region, Yemeni conflict, will just go away. You know, if they finally start up thinking positively toward one country, you know, and then slowly build a common sense and common interest, you know, like where the people can live freely and do business. So it works for everybody. Right now, Saudis are in trouble. You know, like Turkey is, you know, like in economic expansion. But you know, if the Syrian conflict didn't work for them very well, and you know, the instability of Iraq, they want to do business. They want Turks. They want to reach Central Asian republics, which are they came from. You know, there are a lot of Turkish-speaking people in Central Asia who needs their genes and stuff. So you know, they have interest for region to calm down, and also China, if they do believe in the Belt Road, they have interest for tensions to calm down too. So it's up to West now to recognize the opportunity and send good, willing missionaries. Yeah, start talking to representatives of other big powers, and start rebuilding Syria and Near East.
Syria would be a great place to start because Syria is a multi-ethnic country.
Sure.
So many different religions coexisting, and really in a very peaceful way.
Yeah.
Of course, it was in certain political circumstances that are unique to Syria, but Syria's visitors have often tell me how peaceful it is and how friendly the people are, how genuinely warm and welcoming and
Sure.
generally content. Many
Sure.
people are there. But generally, I think the key challenge for Western countries is how to move away from like a war economy to a peaceful economy, because the military-industrial complex is so strong.
Sure.
But generally, at the same time, there seems to be Lebanon is a challenge, because right now Lebanon is having severe economic problems.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, I just met a Lebanese merchant in New York. He told me basically the Lebanese are going to have to decide who they want to go for it, U.S. or China. They're going to have to make a decision because their own elites are kind of torn. But if you could have both sides together, because the America is already so heavily involved, you have the American University of Beirut, which is one of the best universities, in the Middle East.
Yeah.
So to wrap it up, the new Silk Road, the Belt and Road Initiative, is in a much more advanced stage than we realize, because in most of Central Asia and in Africa, especially in Africa, China's been involved for several years very intensively. Throughout China, I've been to Africa a few months ago. You could see major Chinese investments here. They build roads, bridges, hospitals. The thing is, in Africa already, the Africans are making their own mobile phones. Many African countries now need to learn Chinese, and it's even mandatory in Uganda, I think, in the high school. They also have, now China is even moving a lot of the production of basic goods to Africa, and they're doing very advanced, they're trying to move to like produce very high advanced technological goods, which may take them 10 years to get to the same level the West is at, actually the same level. To narrow that gap in the highest part is very hard. Like in the beginning it's easy, but to get to that fine level of technology that, like for example, the United States or Germany has, that takes a lot of time and a lot of research. At the same time, the interesting thing is that there's been criticism of China in Africa, because people say, why does China bring Chinese people to work in Africa? Why doesn't it hire Africa? But China says, you need to remember, we're still a developing country. We're a country of 1.6 billion people. We're still developing, so we also need to take care of our own people. And also there's still been friction in some cases between some Chinese and Africans. There's been some racism from some Chinese towards Africans. Sure. But by and large, relations are improving a lot. Things are getting better and better. Like in Beijing, there's a lot of African students. They all get free scholarships to study there.
Nice.
And you have a lot of, I even saw a lot of interracial marriages in the last few years.
Nice.
So there's been a lot of changes with that. But in Africa, you could see very clearly how heavily China's invested. In Europe, it's kind of becoming, I would say, more of a contested zone. and in Serbia, Greece, Portugal, even France, it's becoming more acceptable. Now the biggest challenge for now seems to be the 5G, that China wants to connect high technology, like what they call smart cities, to have very fast internet that could really allow you people to do a lot of things. Like in China, what they do with the smartphones, cell phone, they pay with it for everything using a cell phone. They transfer money using like a WeChat, which is a Weixin, kind of a WhatsApp, and they transfer money very easily through that.
Right.
So the money's moving very quickly there. It's very easy to do business in that way. Very easy to spend money. You don't even realize you don't have to take out your wallet. There's advantages and disadvantages, but generally the point I want to make is that now 5G seems to be a big case because of coronavirus. There's been a lot of conspiracy theories about 5G, like 5G infects the body that negatively. It even causes coronavirus. It weakens the body. I think a lot is unsubstantiated, but we don't really know enough about 5G. But the United States is very worried about 5G because it's concerned that China is going to have too much control of knowledge of what's going on in the different economies, and that it will use to spy on these countries. So until recently, the United Kingdom was willing to accept 5G because what China did and what China usually does very cleverly is they say, we're just going to give you a very, very good price. And once the prices are so low, people just say, okay. And they actually are providing very good quality. In the past, they would provide cheap goods. Now they actually provide very good quality for a low price, which is much harder to do.
Sure. Before we wrap it up, maybe we should touch the spiritual part of the one belt road. What you just mentioned, that's what I keep every time I go to the West, America or England or Western Europe. You know, people talk about that. We should be careful because they shouldn't. But I'm telling them like what makes us, you know, like privileged that we could do something and they cannot. That we finally have to come to the stand, then we are equal. You know, like since Hegel, we look on the Chinese people like a low, you know, because they didn't know about that. They didn't know the Confucius existed, you know, 5 centuries before Christ. Then Lao Tzu also existed, and then, you know, they had unbelievable fusions of the 3 warriors, big religions like Taoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism over the centuries, and while we were killing each other